This is the first day of a new age.
Let's play then.
Let's go!
That's fantastic.
Yeah, boy!
The whole world is in your grasp.
What a thrill.
I'm Sarah Vinyals. I'm the Talent Schemes Director at the TV Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the Edinburgh TV Festival. I'm really pleased to be here to introduce today's session. Before I do, I just wanted to flag a few other things that we have coming up, which might be of interest to you. The first is our flagship schemes, The Network and Ones to Watch, which are currently open for entry. If you want to begin a career in TV or have been working in TV for at least 3 years and want to develop your career, these programmes are for you. You can find out more information about both of these on the Edinburgh TV Festival website. Secondly, if you want to find out the winners of this year's New Voice Awards, and why wouldn't you, including the Debut Writer Award and the All 3 Media New Script Awards, we'll be making the announcements in a virtual ceremony via the TV Foundation Twitter page this coming Tuesday, the 16th of March. And finally, I want to say a massive thank you to Sky for supporting this panel and this year's Debut Writer Award. We couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate your support. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you your host for today, the Brit List's Alexandra Arlango. Alex, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and hello, everybody. I'm Alexandra Arlango, and I run the Brit List, a showcase of the best screenwriting talent coming out of the UK. I'm delighted to have been asked to again chair this panel, and without further ado, want to introduce the writers who have joined me today. They are writer Roanne Bardsley, actor and writer Jeremone Holder, hi Jerome, writer Matilda Bini, hi Matilda, and Gabriel Bisset-Smith, writer, actor, director and comedian, hi. Thank you all for joining us. Before we start, would you like to introduce yourselves and say how long you've been writing and tell us briefly about a project that you're most proud of? Roanne, do you want to start?
Hello, I'm Roanne. I've been professionally writing scripts for about 5.5 years. And for a long time, I was a co-writer on Hollyoaks. And I think the episode I'm most proud of was an episode I wrote about teenage hopelessness.
Amazing, thank you. Jerome.
Hi, my name's Jerome. I've been writing for about, I'd say, probably for around 1.5 years. So I'm quite new to this game, as it were. But the work I'm most proud of was my debut. It's up by Sky called Boys that Ashley Waters directed. That's my baby. That's my proud of.
Amazing. Matilda.
Hi everyone, my name is Matilda Bini. I'm a bionic playwright and screenwriter. I've been writing for about 10 years now, but I'd say professionally for the last 7-ish years. And the thing that I'm most proud of, or one of the things I'm most proud of, is a short digital play / film that I wrote called Shielders with my frequent collaborator Debbie Hannon, and it was very sci-fi, weird, and yeah, I was really proud of what we made.
Thanks. And Gabriel.
Hi, yeah, I've been writing for at least 10 years, but sort of, if you counted the years I was actually paid for it, probably about 4. The thing I'm most proud of is a play I had on recently at the Soho Theatre called Whitewash, which was semi-autobiographical, and I've sort of done a lot of plays over the years, but this one felt like I'd finally found my voice to a degree, I guess.
Great, thank you all. I thought the most useful way for us to explore your experiences and reflections of writing for TV would be to talk about the different stages of your writing journeys. So jumping right in and knowing that there's no one route into it, can you talk about how you got into the TV writing business? Gabriel, why don't you start?
So I would say it was, I don't think it's potentially, it might be different for other people. It's ever really one way. It was a combination of a few things, but I'd say it was because I wrote a play just off my own back essentially, and then sent it out to different theatres that would read plays. And through that, I was then sort of put in contact with the BBC Writers' Room, and they read the play, and then they sort of put me on a scheme. And then alongside that kind of interest meant that I pitched something, and then I could manage to get an agent. But you know, still by that point, I would say there was still a lot to happen before I was probably in my first writer's room, which was probably quite a few years later. But I'd ultimately say, if people ask me, it was through theatre I got into TV.
And Roanne, what about you?
I always knew that I wanted to write scripts, but I knew how difficult that was going to be. So the way I approached it was trying to get any job I could in drama. And eventually I got a job as a storyliner on Hollyoaks, and I just worked my way up within the Hollyoaks family and got persuaded them to give me a script eventually, and then moved on to the writing team.
Jerome?
Mine was quite lucky actually, because I've always been an actor. So from like the age of 4, I've been acting, and so you know people, you meet people along the way. And when I was around, I don't know, 16, 17, I met a producer and also like an acting school coach named was Jean. And he knew I just always loved scripts, so I used to write things to him, and you know, just yeah. I was like, bro, give me your opinion. What do you think of this? A couple of years down the line, he began to sort of manage Ashley Walters. He put my script in front of him, and he decided that was what he wanted to make his like directorial debut from. And so my work got put in front of his. Sky got involved. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say, and we've been working like together ever since. So a lot of luck in my opinion. But yeah, kind of that's how it went around. Yeah.
And Matilda?
Yeah, similarly to Gabriel, I started in theatre. I knew I wanted to write for screen one day, but had no idea how you get into that world or the process. But then I was encouraged to try and write a play, and discovered I loved theatre and working with actors and things like that. And gradually, as I got more experience writing plays, I was asked like if I'd be interested in writing screen, and I was like, yes, I was, but I had no idea how to do it. And then I ended up doing a master's in playwriting and screenwriting, which I was only able to do because I got a scholarship, because I didn't have 10 grand lying around. And that kind of really helped kickstart my screenwriting career.
So, I mean, it's so interesting, those, you know, I think even just here in this room, we've got so many different ways that you can actually find your way to writing. And I suppose just when you're thinking about when you're first starting off, you know, that you're going to have to show your work to somebody, and that must be one of the scariest things, you know, especially when it's maybe your first draft of something and you have no gauge of how good it is. You know, you're in love with it, but you don't know how other people react. How did you find the courage to do that? And I suppose, what was the reaction that you got that made you carry on? Jerome?
Yeah, you're right. It is very, very scary to put your work in front of anyone. But I think, as I feel like with all writers, you just got to be very persistent, isn't it? Like, it really is a kicking down the door kind of thing, and you've got to be able to. You'll take rejection on both fronts. I take rejection on both fronts. From an actor's perspective, there's auditions you don't get. From a writing perspective, there's people who can't do anything with your work. And I think I've just adopted that, just kept being persistent, put my work in front of people whenever they, you know, were receptive to looking at it, and just not really take no, just keep going with it really, and try and get your work out to as many people as possible, I'd say.
And have you found that, Matilda?
Yeah, I think when writers start out, generally, we're always writing for ourselves anyway, and we're just telling stories to ourselves. We're our first audience. And when you start thinking about putting your work in front of other people, it can be really exposing, really scary. You don't know the reaction you're going to get. But I think if you want your work to be seen, to be made, it has to be seen by other eyes other than your own. And I think that's when I began to take that seriously, that actually I want to have work made. It meant I'm going to have to let it go out into the world, let it get rejected, get some bad feedback. Like, I was going to take that all on the chin. Like, I always think of rejection as like, I try and treat rejection like a comma and not a full stop. That actually, okay, that person didn't want it, they might not be the right person for it or what have you, but that doesn't mean everyone in the industry or everyone that reads it will not like it. There's the right reader is out there, and it's just about trying to get it to them as many times as you can. And if you don't put your work out there, no one will ever see it anywhere. It won't ever get made. So you do have to kind of come over that hurdle of like, okay, I want to see this on the screen. I want to see this on the stage. That means I've got to get it out in front of people.
Gabriel.
Yeah, I kind of, whenever I speak to people who like want to start out writing or want to do writing, I'm like, I believe anyone can be a writer and anyone has a story to tell, but I believe you have to accept that you'll be terrible, and you have to accept that you need to be able to share how terrible you are. There's like, that's the big thing. I think we all imagine, you know, we're going to write this incredible, every time we write, it's going to be incredible, and it's kind of not true. And being able to accept that you're going to be bad, and also being able that you need other people's input sometimes to make yourself better, I think is like the key to being a successful writer, really. And that I meet so many people who are scared of exposing themselves, which is totally justifiable. But I've kind of think I've got a big enough ego to allow people to see how awful my writing. Well, now I have, definitely. I'm sort of like, you're still always delivering a terrible draft at some point, and you just sort of have to be able to take that on the chin and not be afraid. And also just look at like what's being made. There's so much stuff that's just terrible that's on TV. You're going to be better than something, is how I've always sort of seen it. So yes, but to really ask your question, it's horrible, but it's a necessary, it's like that is kind of what the process is to a degree, is putting yourself out there and exposing yourself, and then, as Matilda sort of says, then using any feedback or rejection as a way to try and improve. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are just wrong and their taste is wrong, and you have to also dictate who you trust and who you don't. So I always send it to people that I trust a lot first, like family, and they're actually the harshest critics I possibly have, actually. But yeah.
And Roanne.
Yeah, I think it never gets easier, actually, sharing a new piece of work. But I kind of, off the back of what Gabriel just said, I think sharing it with people who are outside of the industry that you love and trust, who will be kind but honest, is really great in the first instance, because everybody watches TV drama. Everybody's a consumer of it. So you don't have to be an industry professional to read a script and react. And actually, sometimes it's interesting to get the reactions of people who aren't professionals, who aren't trained to look for certain things, just to get a kind of gut reaction. And they might not know exactly what's wrong with it, but if they're, you know, bumping against something you've written, there's probably a reason for that. And you know, at least you know once they've reacted whether or not it's utterly dreadful. And then once you've had another go at it, then you can share it with somebody professional, maybe.
Yeah. I suppose I'm really interested to hear, you know, just how you know, the idea of rejection, you know, I think that's what people are really afraid of, but actually being able to learn from it is so important. And also, you know, you've all spoken about the people that have championed you as well, and you know, you have to listen to them as well as the critics, and find the balance between the two. I'm interested to know, because everybody, again, just as your journeys to becoming writers for television are all different, your writing processes, I'm sure, are all different, and it would be really interesting just to have a bit of, you know, insight into how you write. Like, what is your day structured like? And I'm particularly interested because Matilda and Gabriel, you are you're co-writers as well, and how you share the writing burden, if you like, or joys. So if you guys could speak first, and then maybe Roanne and Jerome, you could come in afterwards.
Do you want to? Well, I'd like to say, me and Matilda write together and we write separately. For me personally, there is no routine. It's a chaos, a hellish experience every single time, and every time I don't get better, and I just wait till it's the worst possible moment and then try and finish it. When me and Matilda work together, I think we appreciate. I think we work in lots of different ways, don't we, Matilda? We've sat together and done post-it notes, and then we'll work on the story together. Sometimes we'll go back and forth on drafts. I think we're both quite respectful of each other's time or the way that we approach stuff. So sometimes we're like, can you pick this up? Can I pick that up? I mean, yeah, what do you think, Matilda? I don't know how to describe it.
Similarly, like, my personal process is very chaotic because I also manage a team of carers. So no day is the same for me anyway. And so a lot of the time I'm writing in pockets of time that I have, or pockets of support that I might have during the day. So it is really chaotic. It is really all over the place. And I wish it was more structured, but it just won't ever be, I don't think. But yeah, what kind of echoing what Gabriel was saying in terms of, one, I think because our processes are so similar is why we get on. It's like, because it is such a mess. And when working with another writer, I think it's so important to have a rapport so that you're able to have like really honest conversations, whether that's about working on the next draft, whether it's about the headspace that you're in, and also the plan. Like, what is the plan? How are we going to do this? Are you going to do the next draft, or do I do the next draft and then you read it and then we feed back to one another? Or like, I think having a really clear plan of what is the aim. And like, I think when me and Gabriel like decided to go down this route together, we knew that we wanted to make this film. Like, at the end of the day, we wanted to see this film on screen. So we were going to do everything it took to get it there. So that meant having those in-person storylining sessions and like going through character journeys and things like that, agreeing which person would do the first draft and the person that would do the next draft, and how we'd feed back to one another. And it kind of, our structure almost kind of developed out of itself in terms of how we collaborated. But I think what I appreciate with working with Gabriel is how important communication is. Like, you have to be able to say, this isn't working, or I'm not quite sure about this idea, or where did this come from? Can you explain it to me, kind of thing. I don't think we would have gotten this far if we didn't communicate really well.
Jerome?
The process. Is it a process? It's like, with me, right, I try and feed myself with as much inspiration. It's like you almost get bitten sometimes, don't you? There's an idea, but before you even can start to sort of commit it to page or commit it to paper, you just constantly feed yourself, and you study it, you think about your characters or where you want this story to go. I probably need to learn about this. I'm a big fan of dialogue, so dialogue will be something that I'll even think of before I even know where the story's going in half of the scripts that I'm doing, because that's what's always, captured me in any film or any TV that I've seen and I've loved. So it's a lot of iPhone note pages, literally just being fed as you walk around, and you get, like I said, you get bitten, and it comes out of nowhere sometimes, and it's just this page of just like these random thoughts. And then once you feel full, then you like approach the computer and you start typing. So I allow myself to have the period to get full and feed myself with things before I even start typing. Sure.
Do you think that then allows you to, it all comes out sort of in a one, I don't mean it in one go, you know, is it sort of like you're getting all these ideas in and then you're letting them go onto the page? Is that
100%? Like, I'm weird as well because I actually can't really start anything until I have the title. I don't know what it is. It helps me frame it and helps it become like realized and an actual thing. The title may change, but it helps me sort of structure it and be like, okay, boom, this is what I'm doing. So weird things like that, because as with anything, there's not a straight path, isn't it? It's everything can come and everything can come, and you never know when it's going to happen. But it does tend to just spill out of me once I've got into a certain point. But you have to eat first. You have to obviously visit every table at the buffet and then move it.
I like that analogy. Roanne, how do you work?
Yeah, I really like that too, because I think sometimes it's hard to accept that, sort of like when you're walking around and doing your day and you're trying to get something done and you can't, that you're sort of cooking an idea in the back of your head a lot of the time, and it feels like you're being so unproductive. And I think you can be really harsh on yourself, thinking, I'm just not getting anything done, why can't I do this? But then your brain will be like busy in the background and it will have unlocked something eventually, and then you'll go, there it is, and I can start. I think for me, I have two sort of different working personas. Because I come from a soap background, that certainly taught me a lot of discipline in creativity, because there's just no give in that schedule. So when it comes to something in production, I can really focus and get stuff done. But when I'm coming up with original ideas, it's much more of the chaotic, am I ever going to write again type stress. So I think there's sort of two versions of my writing style, I think.
And I mean, is that something you all suffer from? A question of, am I ever going to write again? Is it something like, is it sort of like, you know, remembering the difficulties of the last time and thinking, do I want to go through this process again? Or do you all approach that in different ways? I think that's an interesting thing to keep bumping up against if this is a career. You know, it's sort of, that's going to be hard every time. It is like giving birth, you know, to a new child. Do you, Matilda, find that? Or
yeah, I get this very strange amnesia, and thankfully some of my writers friends have experienced this, where like, especially if I'd say more so in plays where I'm asked to write another play and I'm like, but I've never written a play in my life. What are you talking about? Who told you I write plays? Like, it's just this strange amnesia, like I've never done it before. And I think that's part of the kind of like imposter syndrome, about like not feeling good enough, not thinking what you're doing is good or of any value or anything. But I'm kind of learning to like quieten that voice and actually believe in myself, and like, I've gotten this far, so surely something is working. But I also find that like just writing in general is just, I think because it's so emotional to do it, like you're tapping into all these feelings, so it kind of makes sense that some of those feelings would like still kind of linger after you've, you know, written a scene with a really heavy moment or a really elated scene. Like some of that does genuinely like rub off on me sometimes, so I kind of have to like kind of remind myself who I am in a sense and be like, no, you're a writer, this is what you want to do. And I think because of the pandemic as well, I've definitely been questioning everything, like every life decision that has gotten me to this point. But I think that's totally normal, and actually it's just remembering why I love doing this. Why do I enjoy telling stories, and going back to those stories of writers or filmmakers whose work I enjoy.
Jerome, do you find it hard every time, or are you just absorbing the buffet, a new buffet each time?
No, it is. Sometimes the buffet's not open, isn't it? Sometimes. Do you know what? We're emotional anyway, I believe, as writers. Like we're in tune with different things. Like we're not always going to be able to exercise like our muse when it's within us, or just tapping on our shoulder and stuff. And it could be rejection, it could be just because you don't feel like it today. And I tend to kind of go with what my body is telling me, really. If it doesn't feel right to write today, I won't do. But if I'm in the process of something that I'm working with, obviously a production company, or I know there's a deadline, then you kind of have to snap yourself, like you have to just kind of snap yourself out of it, because there is a deadline here, and you almost have to, encourage the muse almost. And that can be just taking steps away. It can be listening to music, revisiting work that you've done before, or something that makes you feel like, do you know what, I have got this, man. I can deliver on this. So yes, it is annoying, and it does happen. It will happen. Every project that you come across, it will happen. But you've got to find a way to get yourself out of it. Easier said than done, yes, but you will find a way. You will find a way.
Yeah, and I think you've raised a good point, both you and Matilda, just with the pandemic. You know, we're living in such extraordinary times, and I think I don't know anybody who hasn't questioned, what are we doing? Do we want to live this life? Has that impacted for you, Gabriel, your muse and your energy to write? I mean, you know, yeah. You hear these stories of like Shakespeare wrote King Lear in the plague years or whatever. You know, we're not all Shakespeare, of course. And yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the sort of equivalent of King Lear in Corona times would be. Something about Boris and Dominic Cummings, and who wants to watch that? Yeah, I mean, I've questioned every single ounce of. What's weird, I think, for me, is a writer's life isn't far off a lockdown in a lot of ways. There's a lot of isolation and going for walks and working out how to, you know, keep yourself sane. I think you realize once you take away any kind of like socializing and stuff on top of that it becomes trickier. And then also, I think there might be an industry-wide kind of blanket. We're ignoring it slightly. So a lot of the projects I'm working on, they're like, yeah, let's see how it plays out. And so I'm like, so we're still writing this club scene then? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, so, and you know, I'd sort of always prided myself on writing about the world and the real world. And it feels like we don't quite know what that's going to look like yet. So that's become weird, approaching characters a little bit and going, well, we're all doing the same thing to some degree, and we're just ignoring that. So definitely, I think in terms of mental health, and I think this is one of, sort of as Matilda thing, one of the great thing about me and Matilda working together is we both think we're very much on the same page, and we'll go, how have you got on? It just, you know, it hasn't come this week. Great. Like it hasn't, you know, and I feel like there's something rewarding in connecting with someone else like that. To go back quickly to your other thing about the motivation though, I think, and I want to try and frame this so it doesn't sound depressing anyway, but I think hope is such a key part of writing. I don't think I ever wanted to be a writer. I wanted to put on plays and I wanted to make TV shows. And I've been in the game for quite a while. So I've been in development for a very long time, and it has got harder and harder when you start a new project because of the so many projects that never happened. To feel excited. And when I started, you know, I was like, I'm going to write this, it's going to be on TV, and it's going to be amazing. And then you work on about 6 TV shows that don't happen, and then you start going, oof. And so it definitely gets hard to get excited when a new project arrives sometimes. And with coronavirus, there's definitely been that kind of the way, and I think it could be a positive, but the way that you see your work being made, or the route to it, you're not sure what that looks like anymore. So I think that hope at the end of it, and the reason you go through all the pain, that's for me the thing that sometimes I battle with believing in or not, and whether that's going to happen.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. Just moving on. So thinking about this, the infamous catch-22 that is often cited, and, you know, a tricky one to always get over, is how an agent can really help you find work and help you formulate your career. But then it's very hard to find an agent if you haven't actually made anything yet. That kind of, you know, this, and it comes up a lot, I know. How did you do it? How did you navigate that? Matilda?
Yes, mine was in a bit of a roundabout way. For a long time, like for the first 6 years of my career, I didn't have an agent. But when I did get an agent, it felt like more doors open, more opportunities presented themselves. And I'm really lucky to have the agent that I have, because we get on so well, and he's brilliant and is thinking about my future. Like, he's in this for the long haul. And I think at least in the first 6 years when you don't have an agent, I started to reconcile with the fact that actually good work will find a way, if that makes sense. That actually, if a good script, you not having an agent won't stop something from getting made. Like, a lot of the time, because this medium is so collaborative, if you can find a director that you get on with, or a producer, or just another, you know, maybe it might even be a co-writer, that actually, if you can open up your work in a way that invites collaborators on board, things can still get made even if you don't have an agent. And I think it took me a while to realize that actually, I will get an agent when I need one, and in the end I did. That I had a development deal, or was rather offered a TV development deal with a production company, and I didn't have an agent. And with that production company, they helped me get an agent in contacting agents that they'd worked with other writers, that are they looking, kind of thing. So in a way, I got an agent when I needed one, but not having an agent didn't mean the work didn't come in, or I couldn't take opportunities or things like that. So I think I'm kind of like dancing around it in the sense of like, if you can get an agent, great, but your career won't stall by not having one.
That's really great. That's really heartening to know. Jerome, how did you find a writing agent?
I'm glad you came to me next, because that's literally the position I'm in. I'm pre-agent. Everything I've done has been with the production company that I worked with on my first scripts, and so I'm still in that phase of, and I'm not actually actively seeking out agents at the moment. What I'm doing is obviously working with this production company, but I think cultivating my work so that I'm in a position to present something to an agent when it's that time. That is like, okay, boom, okay, let's get this more work done. I'm quite comfortable being in this sort of, as you say, collaborative space, working with this production company, this director that I've been working with, and I'm working on that now, and then getting myself into a position of having an agent. But you're right, Matilda, things can get made. I'm lucky that I've been able to, I do have an acting agent, and so obviously I have access to different people within the industry, be it directors, you know, actors or producers, which means in a way I can, you know, put my script in front of the right people. So just to back Matilda up and to say, yeah, you don't need an agent to get things made. It is nice to have one eventually. So, and if I could give me a couple of years, and then yeah, I'll be there.
Brilliant. Roanne.
I didn't sort of try and get an agent until I'd written the first couple of scripts at Hollyoaks, which obviously I sort of got there on my own. But what I will say as a kind of tip was I targeted junior or assistant agents at bigger agencies, because they will usually be building their own smaller books, and they're bound to progress to be an agent. So that's what's happened with my agent. She's now, you know, an agent in her own right, and she's got a really good book. But I approached her when she was an assistant and just had a few clients. So I think that's really helpful, because they, you know, we were sort of similar age, they're ambitious, they want to find people that are going to help them get to the next stage in their career as well. So I think that's a really good kind of symbiotic relationship to try and have.
And Gabriel?
Yeah, mine was, I kind of knew straight away, and this is sometimes when I say sort of what Matilda said, I'd done the play thing, I'd gone to writers and I'd pitched something, and then there was like this tiniest contract that needed negotiation for like £500. But I just thought, if I contact agents saying I need a contract negotiated, that'll probably get their interest. And yeah, that was the same way. But equally, my agents are great, but for a writing agent, you still have to generate a huge amount of the stuff you're doing yourself anyway. They can get you a meeting, but it's still, I always try and write a spec script a year, a play a year, just to also put it out in this, and lots of schemes and stuff, and trying to enter as many awards as possible. It's still doing that, whether you have an agent or not. I still try and do all of that stuff, because an agent's great, but as Matilda and Jerome said, it doesn't suddenly really open. It gets you a few more doors, but it doesn't suddenly get you in the room necessarily, or get you on the job. You still have to generate quite a lot of stuff. And I'd just quickly add, I did a lot of online like sketches and short films, and again, I'm like Jerome, I have access to actor friends and stuff, so that I'm huge. I know that's a huge like privilege as well, to be able to ring up a mate and be like, come and do a short. But just trying to generate as much work as I possibly could, regardless of agents, I think is also a useful tool to do it if you can do it.
Great, we've got some questions coming in, so rather than just waiting till the end, I might just feed in a couple of them now. So Javid Rezai says, Roanne, loved working with you on Hollyoaks. How was the move from being on a soap for a long time to other TV drama? Was it difficult? Did you find you were pigeonholed as a soap writer in inverted commas, or was it smooth?
Yeah, no, it wasn't easy. And I think it's still something I'm wrangling with, to be honest. For various reasons, I think there is a pigeonholing and there is a snobbery in this industry about continuing drama, which is really frustrating. Sometimes I feel like people would rather I worked in a shop and wrote plays that, in my spare time, than the fact that I spent 6 years, writing things that made it onto the television for some reason. There's just, people look down on it. But it gives you so many skills. I would never say don't do it, because having that experience of writing something that gets on the television every month is invaluable. And there are, it's not industry wide, there are people out there who absolutely value it, but I did find it difficult. And I would also say just the adjustment of, in soap, I knew where, it's almost like a full-time job. I knew where my money was coming from. I knew where my contracts were coming from. And then leaving that to go into this freelance development world of, as Gabriel was talking about earlier, work that goes nowhere, and doing interviews. Like, I didn't really experience rejection when I was at Hollyoaks. So it's been a whole other ballgame, but I've sort of broken through now, and I am writing on a drama at the moment, and things are moving, but it took me 1.5 years to get a job on another drama. I had a lot of development work in that time, but it wasn't easy, definitely.
Carmen Radchek, I hope I've said your name correctly. How do you know when to let go of a draft? That's an interesting one, because I know a lot of writers, sometimes I have writers sending me a first draft or their draft, and then 2 minutes later it'll be, oh no, it's this one. And I'm sure you've all experienced that, but how do you know when you just have to, this is it? Matilda.
Oh, that's a hard one. I think I get a sense, if I've sent it to enough of I've got trusted readers that I send work, and I'm like, does this make sense? What do you get from it? I feel like once I've gotten their notes or feedback, then I feel comfortable enough to send it out, that actually I've had some responses on it. So I kind of get a sense of what I might be asked about or might expect in terms of what people are getting from this particular script or story or what have you. But the truth is, it's like, how long is a piece of string? Sometimes we don't really know. It is just kind of trusting yourself and believing in yourself that you've done enough work on it that you can send it out for someone else to read, and that whatever they say isn't, one, they're just one person, they don't represent the entire industry, but also this is the journey, that this script is going to go on a journey. You sending it out is not the end, but the beginning. And that's kind of what I have to remind myself sometimes.
Yeah. Jerome.
So obviously in the process of writing any script that you do, it is quite an insular experience. And like Matilda said, I also do have friends that I can give it to. But then I think there's even a moment before that when you're like, when is it that time to even give it to them? I'm very, very adamant. I'm quite a perfectionist in the sense that I would never even give it to my friends or for anyone else to read until I feel it's like a finished product. So if you're getting a pilot script from me, if you're getting a short film from me, I send it to you with a treatment that I've made as well. I want you to visually understand it, because a lot of my scripts, as it were, tend to be quite visually focused. I'm obsessed with how things look. And I think that's just in connection to my work in media as well, with brands as well as that just kind of fed into my writing work. But I like things to look like a package. I like for it to seem, ready and something that you could be like, okay, yeah, that can go on the TV. So I have to wait until I feel it myself and I've got everything in line and then I can hand it over to either friends or to anyone who I want to, produce it or anything. It has to feel like a finished product to me. And there's no way to know that. It's just something inward within you where you're like, boom, all right, there you go. So yeah, you just have to wait. Actually, it's nothing I can quite pinpoint.
Does that strike a chord with you, Gabriel?
Yeah, I was thinking there's sort of two sides to it. One's there's the sort of spec script version, which is the script or the play that you're sort of writing off your own back, which to me, I'm like, you have to get it to I have to feel like this is perfect to me, and it won't, it'll be flawed as fuck when people read it, but I'll feel fairly confident about it by the time it's gone out. And then there's sort of stuff when you're working with someone or you're working production company and you've been developing it together, where I might be like, this is a bit more raw, but are these scenes all in the right order? Did these and allowing it to be, because you're already sort of working with the people with the same aim in terms of knowing. Do you know what? It's just, as Jerome said, there's just sort of part of you that's like, yeah, this is ready. And it's always a shock because people will be like, oh, and then they'll have notes. And like you've said, as soon as you hit send, you realize it was too early. Like, that's why you get those emails straight after, oh, no, this one. And I think that's just the torture of it, that it feels right and then it immediately feels wrong the minute you've shared it.
Mm-hmm. Roanne, another question for you maybe. Ollie Hughes asks, how do you get a job as a staff writer or a storyliner?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it was slightly different when I did it, because Hollyoaks did an open call for storyliners and you didn't need any experience, and there was a really long interview process. So I was lucky to get straight into that position, which is actually a sort of mid-ranking position in a soap story room. But I would say how to do it now would be to look for things like junior storyliner, story office assistant, or assistant script editor jobs on continuing dramas. And really, continuing dramas, they're just one massive machine. So once you're in, as long as you are clear about where you want to go and work really hard at the position you've been given, they're very open to moving people around. So I would say try and get any job you can in a soap, really, any entry-level job. Tell them what you want to do, then focus on being as good as you can at the job you've been given, and they will help you move around because they need talented people and they want to keep people there.
Yeah, amazing, thank you. I wanted to ask, you've talked about working with producers and just tips for, like, what was it like having your first general meetings and what advice would you give to prepare for them? Gabriel, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I'm a performer as well, and I went to drama school, so I have quite a jump. I had quite a jump on going into rooms and meeting people. So, but the one thing I will say that becomes more apparent to me is that especially with writing. I used to say, like, going to an acting audition, I'd like shave and look really good, and going as a writer, I'd sort of go in my tracksuit because I'm like, you want to look like someone who sits at home and writes. But I'd say just be yourself. You're there for your brain and who you are, and it's not. They want a person. They don't want someone who knows everything. Who's read every writing book and knows every way that stuff's useful. But they want a personality and a person who has a perspective on the world. And everyone has that. So I just. I hate to say it, but be yourself, really, and don't worry about trying to be, because I'm not being the smartest guy in the room or being a certain way. I think just go in and be like, these are the shows I like, and I think what's really interesting as well is that idea of, like, if you're meeting for TV, people want to make the most successful shows on TV. So rather than going in and being like, I love the work of Ingmar Bergman, I'm like, I want to remake the OC. How do we remake the OC? And people will be like, yeah, we want to make the OC. It was a huge success. So I think that just don't, try and be something you're not.
Mm. And Jerome, being an actor, do you find yourself wanting to perform when you go and meet production companies?
I couldn't have put it better than Gabriel said it, really. Like, as he said, my own experience, I've been comfortable in rooms and stuff like that. But as a writer, just riffing on what Gabriel said, it's me knowing my singular vision. I think I try to be as authentic and as expressive and as passionate in the room. When I'm in front of you, I want to give you everything that I've got in there, because it is a make or break, kind of situation. It feels like every time. But singular vision, know yourself, know what you want to produce, have a clear, articulate, way of presenting it to people, and make it all come from the heart, like the gut. I think don't over-calculate your answers. Don't over-calculate the way you want to position things. I think it should be born from yourself, from your belly. Mm-hmm. I keep talking about food. I'm not even hungry. I don't know. I just feel like it's the best way to describe a lot of these things. Sorry, but yeah. Yeah.
It's good. We're with you. Matilda, how do you take general meetings?
Kind of echo what Jerome and Gabriel said in terms of the importance of being yourself, but also remember you're kind of interviewing them as well. Like, if you do end up in a development deal with these producers, production companies, at times we're talking more than a year-long working relationship, and you want to be sure these are people you want to get into that kind of long-term working relationship with, that they like your ideas, they like your style of writing, but also, do they communicate well? What have they made in the past that you might have watched or liked or enjoyed? Do they make the things you're interested? So for example, like, if I know a production company's only really made predominantly period stuff, I'd be quite weary of, as someone who doesn't write period stuff, I'd be quite weary of, like, am I sure that this is the right fit? My ideas are very contemporary, they're not set in the past and things like that. And it's not to say that they won't ever make contemporary things, but just really thinking about, is this a good home for my work? Is this a good home for my ideas? So like, don't feel too that they've got all the power in those meetings. Come with questions. You want to find out who these people are, what are their visions as well, what are the shows they're watching and things that they're interested in, and does that chime with you? Does that vibe with you? And if it doesn't, that's fine, because there are thousands, and I mean literally thousands are started, new production companies are set up every year. So if one company isn't right for you, that doesn't mean all companies are not right for you. It's just that one, and that actually you're also interviewing them to find the right collaborators for your work, so it gets past development, it gets to production, and it gets on screen.
Thanks. And Roanne?
Maybe, I agree with all of that. Maybe it's useful just to explain for people listening, if they don't know what a general meeting is. It's basically like a date with a production. You go and you spend an hour talking to a development exec, and I was really nervous when I first did them, but you literally are just introducing yourself, what you want to write, what you like writing, what your taste is. And as Matilda says, they're doing the same. They give you a spiel about who the company are and what they want to make. And really, it's just to see if you gel, and you chat for an hour. And we've all had loads of them, and some of them you never speak to those people again. Some people you really click with. Some people will come to you and give you ideas afterwards and see if you want to work with them. Sometimes you'll pitch. They're all different, but I would say, I echo what everyone else has said. It's just about being yourself and not feeling any pressure, because if you don't gel, as Matilda says, you don't want to get into a 2-year relationship with them.
Yeah. It is. The dating is a good analogy. And I suppose the other thing that I'd probably add is research, and I think you touched on it, Gabriel, research, the company that you're meeting, you'll get a sense of what they're interested in by what they've made in the past, and you'll see the experiences of the people that work there as well, so you'll get a vibe of what they're after. A few more questions have been coming in. So Ben Mitchell said, do you have any tips about networking, meeting producers, also anything about getting your work out and into people's hands? And in fact, that slightly echoes also Ian Brumpton's question, which is, what kind of scripts, if you're sending out samples, spec scripts and writing samples to production companies, are there any scripts that stand out? Should it be zeitgeist or big, bold? What will get people's attention? Yes, Gabriel.
I was gonna say, actually, on the last one, I've done a fair bit of script reading for like different things over the years, and I'd say, and going back to the generals meetings thing, I think it's good to like research companies, and it's good to find out. But I do think, what do you want to watch, and what is not being serviced necessarily on the TV for you, because the fundamental thing is nobody knows anything about anything. You know, and I think there's a famous quote in this industry: no one can predict. You know, people seem shocked when huge shows blow up all the time, don't they? When they're like, wow. So I think really just trying to hone in on what you want to see and what you want to say. I think Zeitgeist is fine, but all that. So one of the things that I saw when I read a lot of scripts is whatever show was big at the time, people started writing a similar show. So if Sex Education was big, you'd suddenly see a load of high school sex shows or variations on that. And that's not going to blow anyone's socks off. What's going to blow someone's socks off is a kind of perspective or a voice that's just not a show that's on at the moment, I guess. So I think kind of stick to your guns of what you want to see and what you're not seeing.
Great advice. Anybody else want to jump in?
Well, just on the networking thing, I think it's so hard. So I was, based in the north because of Hollyoaks, and I just knew nobody outside of Hollyoaks. And I would say just shout out to the EdFest. You know, I did Ones to Watch, but the entry-level version is the network. And I went up to Edinburgh, where the TV festival's on in person in normal non-COVID times. And I met so many people. I'm not saying that anything's particularly come from that necessarily, but it was just being in a room with all of these industry people. And it was really interesting speaking to other people on Ones to Watch who were London based and either working with the BBC or whatever. And I'd be excited about, I'm going to go and watch a talk from this person. They'd be like, oh yeah, I sit near them in the open plan BBC office. And I was just like I had no idea how out of the loop I was until I did that. So I would definitely recommend, applying to schemes like that, because if you're somebody that isn't in that London bubble, or isn't with, doesn't have a mate who, if you're trying to get in and you don't have friends or family in the industry, that's what these schemes are for. And I definitely recommend that, because you're just not going to bump into them otherwise. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Anybody else? I've got a couple of other questions. Harrison Kirby asks, who are your writing heroes and inspirations? Jerome?
I would give a couple. First two that came to my head. I love Harmony Korean films. So if you watch Kids, that was I think 1995. That was when I watched that, heard the dialogue, saw how it was made, all of that. I think it's the single biggest influence on anything I've ever done or have ever tried to write. That rawness. So Harmony Korine is a big hero of mine, and Michaela Cole, which is absolutely fantastic. So those are my two heroes.
Matilda.
Yeah, I have lots of kind of writing people that I look up to, but I feel like one of my biggest inspirations, though it's going to sound a bit cheesy, is my mum. Like, she's shaped a lot of my taste in films. Like, the first films that I'd watched were Nollywood films, funnily enough. They weren't kind of Pixar, Disney stuff. I was probably a bit too young for a lot of the content, but like, she really cultivated my love of cinema and films and things like that. So I kind of, have to give her credit.
Brilliant. Roanne?
I mean, there's loads, but probably Sally Wainwright would be the big one in terms of TV writing for me. I just think the shows that she's put on the television, they're always amazing, but they've always got, Scott and Bailey. Happy Valley gets talked about all the time, but Scott and Bailey was such a brilliant show that had these female characters that at the time I don't think were anywhere else on screen. So for me it'd probably be her.
And Gabriel?
Yeah, it's a real tricky one, because I think we all ebb and flow a little bit, like Michaela Cole. Like, it's sort of the stuff that you've watched recently that comes through. I think when I was younger, it used to be like, there's this one, Tim Burton's amazing, and then you start to see how it works and how people have ups and downs. So it's difficult to say. I think I'm kind of with Matilda, that for me, so much comes from my family and my upbringing and the films that were playing in my house that I wouldn't even say necessarily have informed my writing, but informed my way of thinking and approaching character. so yeah, I couldn't think, like, I couldn't really sort of pin it down to one anymore, because it's just like sort of the last thing I watched is my latest hero. The person who managed to make anything, I'm like, you're my hero. How did you?
Well, especially if you make it to the end of a series, I suppose we're all just there's so much choice now as well, that you become much more discerning of what you're going to give your time to, aren't you? But so we've got 5 more minutes, and so I've got a couple more questions just to wrap up with before saying goodbye. What would have helped you when you started writing? Who wants to take that one first? Nobody. Roanne, I'm going to pick you.
I think, I mean, it's such a broad question, but I wonder if one of the things, and I've spoken about it a little bit already, is maybe perspective or an understanding of how much of screenwriting is writing things that never go on screen. And I think I wasn't prepared for that. And I didn't understand that you could make a living and pay your bills being a screenwriter, writing scripts that just stay on a laptop. That isn't something that I understood. And I think maybe managing expectations, not to be depressing, people do get there. And we're all, like Gabriel talked about hope, we're all doing this because we hope it will be us one day. But I think certainly when I first got my first thing into development, I think I sort of assumed that A, it would get made, but also B, that process would be quick. Development, before it even gets to a broadcaster, sometimes takes over a year, and then they take a really long time, and then maybe they'll bring it into development, and then maybe we'll develop it with them for a year, and then they'll say no. And that's like 2.5, 3 years of your life on something, and that happens all the time to everybody. That's not a failure, that's actually a success story. The fact that somebody paid you for your idea, and if a broadcaster develops it, that's an even more of a success story, and yet it can still end in a no. I think I wasn't prepared for that, and I think it's good to go in knowing that's what's going to happen to you.
Does that chime with the rest of you?
Yeah, I definitely think that's, I mean, I'm about to do a notes session on a project that's been 7 years in development. I've got a notes, and and you're like, what notes have we got? Come on, guys, but it never died. Like, it kept dying, and then someone else has come back, and then you do something else, and then people are like, what else you got? And then you bring that one out. I don't think the projects ever die. But I would just say, and it's sort of what Matilda has said about rejection being a comma and not a full stop, is that I always try and take the rejection as, well, okay, that's the path in my story where I then went and wrote another thing, and try and always use it as a way to be like, well, that inspired me to do something else. Because the rejection for some will be, it's slightly relentless, and you have to try and find a way to deal with it, I think.
Jerome?
I couldn't have said it better, honestly. I think what Roanne and Gabriel said is on the money.
On the money. Do you have anything to add, Matilda?
Yeah, similarly, in terms of, like, I think you've got to be in it for the long haul. Writing is a long haul game. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon. I've stolen that from somewhere, but it is a profession that it takes as long as it takes, and unfortunately no one can give you like, oh, this will be on in 2023 or whatever. Like, you're just like Gabe was saying earlier, you're just hoping. And the difference between writers that get work made and the writers that don't get work made is literally just because they haven't given up yet. Like, they're still in it, they're still submitting, they're reminding people that I'm still here, I'm still writing. I might have had a 5-year break, but I'm back. But something I think I definitely would have loved to have been given a heads up about is how not diverse this industry is. Like, if I was told the stats at the beginning of my career, I would have taken another occupation. I'm sorry. Like, if I was told about the number of Black writers, queer writers, disabled writers, like, I probably would not have chosen this career.
Maybe that is something that's just been needing to be addressed.
That I wasn't told, maybe, but yeah, it's been unfortunately, if we're talking about the reality of this industry, it's not a level playing field, and it hasn't been for a very long time. but there are people, schemes, initiatives, companies trying to create some level. They're trying to create things that will bring, create more opportunities, create more pathways for voices that have historically been neglected and ignored.
Brilliant. And on that note, on that hopeful note, and let's hope that this changes very soon. Thank you all so much. We've run out of time, unfortunately. You've been absolutely brilliant and answered these questions, some of them hard, I know, and I hope all of you watching have gleaned a lot from it. So without further ado, I'd like to thank Matilda Bini, really great to have you on, Jeremone Holder, Gabriel Bisset-Smith, and Roanne Bardsley. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.